So where do we start? Where is the microphone? In the left. Let's start with Chris. Let's all please go backward. Not there. Thank you.
Thanks for the talk and making us aware of that project. I suspect your answer is going to be pull requests are welcome, but I'll ask it anyway. The benchmarks that are in the repo so far seem to be mini apps or synthetic things or simulation workloads. Is there any buy-in from the AI community to submit benchmarks to benchmark?
From which community?
AI, machine learning.
Let's see. So we do have something in the pipeline. So there's a benchmark that Livermore is developing for a large-scale ML workload, and Rio is here somewhere. He's aware of it, so he's looking at it as well. That should be contributed in the coming weeks, maybe months. Okay, but from MLPerf is another kind of workload that we've considered. The question is, it's one thing to contribute it, but is somebody going to maintain it, right? And so I sort of expect, so yes, pull requests are welcome, absolutely. But if, I don't have the cycles to maintain what you've contributed and you're not maintaining it, it may just be marked as this is not currently working. I expect to see a spectrum of things, actually, right? I expect that some things are going to be well maintained and running in a lot of places. Some things are going to be less maintained and therefore running in fewer places. But I think that's okay, right? If you think that something is of interest to you, and you think that other people might be willing to help maintain it, by all means, give it a try, and then we'll see what happens.
Larry.
Thanks, Olga. That was really helpful. And I guess I'll selfishly say that's another potential ROI could be it makes it easier for vendors if we have a well-curated set of benchmarks to focus on. But that said, to follow on to AI, ML type of benchmarking, certainly that sounds great to try and add. Do you see any possibility to also add other types of orchestration, for example, Kubernetes to this?
Mm-hmm. So we're looking at that. We're looking at different, so people study, containerization, what are the impacts of performance, et cetera. So we are looking into adding that in Kubernetes as well. It's at the core, right? We need to be able to focus on the performance, right? And so the big question there is how do you actually record the relevant information to understand the performance of such things, but something I'm still learning about. But yeah, that's part of the plan. Yep.
Rude, way back.
Yeah, way back. Mm-hmm. Very interesting talk. Anything about benchmarking is near and dear to me. I have one question. When you say analysis, so you're trying to capture the characteristics of the application. Is that so? You'd like to know, like, is this very instruction heavy or data heavy, or some global characteristics so users can map it onto their own application, like, that's the kind of thing that reflects what I'm doing. Are you doing something like that?
Right. So so far, right. So I use my own tool chain. I actually am a performance analysis person to begin with. So this is sort of like, this is all you have to do before you get to performance analysis, right? Basically, some of the benchmarks, right, are instrumented with various tools, and so it's easier to get information about them from that perspective. You can get a variety of information from different platforms. So, for example, I'll point you at some papers of mine that are recent. But you can get, a pretty good understanding of how your performance is looking at, like on, let's say, Intel CPUs, because we've had them forever, right? So you can have a top-down analysis of, this one mostly waits on memory, this one, waits on the division operator, right? Things like that. So you can get that information on one platform. And then you can look at your performance on another platform and start looking at the hardware counters there and see, how does that change. But ultimately, right, it depends on what tools are you able to run your benchmarks with, and what you're able to record, and what you're able to use to understand those results. And so my tool chain is Caliper, which hooks into a variety of vendor-specific tools. And then we developed an entire Python EDA platform for exploring those results. So look at my recent papers. Yeah. Happy to chat more. Yep.
Jim?
Yes, Olga, from the standpoint of co-design, I'm interested in what is the range of technology readiness levels that Benchpark is actually targeting. I know you're pre-production because you want to use co-design to support first-of-a-kind platform procurements, but how low would you go within technology readiness levels?
So currently the idea is run everywhere you can, right? And understand performance everywhere you can. And so depending on how far out in the future you're looking at different hardware, right? If you're looking 2 years ahead, you can probably gain a lot of information from being, just 1 or 2 generations back of what the current hardware is, and some information about, where that hardware is headed. Are they, growing memory bandwidth? What are they growing for their next iterations? So far, we've focused on basically existing machines, and that's in part why I am so interested in this collaboration, because I may not have direct access to Fugaku or other machines that are quite different than mine, right? And then basically, with setting up a system like this, I can have my colleagues at Recon run my stuff there, not asking them to port, not asking them to stand on their heads to do this for me, an easy task. And there's an apples to apples comparison that comes out of this because of the full specification.
So let me ask an example. So there are a number of new AI architectures coming that are already here, actually deployed. Samba Nova, Cerebrus, Grok, et cetera.
Yeah.
And as you move into looking at AI benchmarks, are you using these then to make comparisons between El Capitan and
Not yet. And then, of course, so the goal is to do that, right? That's the hope. Of course, for stuff that's under NDA, I may be looking at that, but I can't show you.
Fair enough.
But obviously, the results that are on systems that are no longer under NDA, there is no problem for us to be publishing those.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Florina?
Is it on? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Olga, for reminding us that benchmarking is important, that we shouldn't give up. I'm very puzzled on how to contribute to the ROI, especially for postdocs and other researchers. I think it starts with the community. I think one of us cannot do anything. If I supervise a student on benchmarking in HPC, then the problem is how do I get the work published, right, to motivate the ROI or the postdoc. So I think committees in conferences, in journals need to understand that benchmarking is not something we need, but we don't want to talk about or publish about because we cannot always check the innovation box, right? You can't have innovational systems that are not producing the performance you need. And you don't know if they're producing the performance you need unless you do benchmarking work and reproducible and replicable and recordable benchmarking of performance. So I think I'm saying this to everybody. It's not a question, it's a comment, but maybe you already have asked or discussed with the community. But I would say that we are the ones who can make this ROI positive.
Right. So there's a lot in that, and I'm with you that it's often publishing papers on things like that is not considered. You didn't invent anything. People don't consider how much work goes in, and the value of proposition is not research sometimes. So that's a challenge, right? So, but then reproducibility, I think seems to be moving in the right direction. So SC is now having, reproducibility checks. They also have the state of the practice track for papers, which I have not had luck with. They do not accept things that are not research, so that doesn't make sense. But there's issues, and that has to be resolved. I think it kind of goes in line with also showing what doesn't work.
Yes.
Right. That too is not publishable most times, and so that's also a challenge. But I agree that there needs to be a way to demonstrate more low-level things. Yeah.
Just want to mention also the ACM Reproducibility Conference is picking up steam, and it's sponsored technically by ACM. So that's another place where work like this should be submitted and should be. And state of the practice, whoever organizes state of the practice at SC in the next years, keep benchmarking on the list. Thank you.
And before going too much into that, Kevin has been talking about similar things yesterday. Isn't that right? The guy in the back.
Oh, I see him now. Yeah.
Rafael.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. Just a quick comment and question too. I think it's amazing to see that. I think we should talk more after about. But on the CI side, CI/CD, the pipelines, how do you think the data centers or computing centers can better accept it? Because we know it's a challenge. I'm at OCF and I was in a project before at TCP that was trying to deploy CI/CD on some places, and it's just a nightmare go for the admins. And they say, okay, you can run, but you cannot get the data out of here. You cannot, So how do you intend to go to these centers and say, this is what we're going to run, and this is probably some data that we're going to share? So what is your goals there?
Yeah, so I can't speak for all data centers. Trying to work through this on our end. There's some technological challenges for sure. In terms of publishing data, that's these are all open source benchmarks. Everything's open source. Publishing those results on systems that are not under NDA. Turns out that's not really a big problem. That's okay. But then we have to go data center by data center and do that. One of the venues that I am thinking can be sort of a neutral territory that should be easier to pursue is the cloud providers, actually, because you run what you run. You do what that information, what you will, that's yours. And so that can be a neutral ground, especially for, let's say, contributions that people have made from other organizations, but I don't necessarily know their code, so I can't just run their code on my systems, right? The cloud providers can be a neutral ground for that, and can hopefully enable some of the other publishing and so on that you're mentioning. But it is a challenge that we'll have to tackle one by one at our own data centers, I think, and that's it's not going to be possible for me to convince Oak Ridge what Oak Ridge should do, but hopefully you can help.
But thanks, Olga, for the fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much.